With Integrated Strategies 3, Il Siracusano, and new operators in the Red Certificate shop, the May 23rd content drop was a big one. We've gone over 5 out of the 7 new operators that were released with it, so let's go over the last 2, the new ops in the Red Cert shop. While it may take a while depending on how many certs you have or don't, getting the new units up to max potential is certainly possible if you'd like to, and considering I cover units at E1 max and E2 max, it's safe to say that if you're considering maxing out one of these units, you'll also be hoping to get them to max potential in the future, which is why I'll be talking about them as such, giving a full view of what they could be at the top of their game. On that note, I talk about damage increases as if they're being directed at a test dummy with 0 defense and 0 resistance, that way we can get the exact numbers down. So, without further ado...
初めてお目にかかります、ドクター。私はクォーツというもので。失礼。この時計通りならば、遅刻はしていないですよね。
Quartz is the 4-star in the shop, costing 150 certs per copy and a brand new guard archetype called the Crusher Guard. They're somewhere between a Centurion and Duelist Guard, having very high attack and HP stats, and attacking all enemies they're blocking, but having 0 defense and 0 resistance, and a lengthier attack interval at 2.5 seconds. She almost sounds like her test dummy. Honing in on her strengths, Quartz's talent gives her an extra 5% max HP and attack at E1, and a 9% at E2. There are no qualifiers for this to kick in, it's just her natural state, and as such, they'll be included in her stat sheet as base stats. Her first skill is a simple attack buff, raising it by 50%. At E1 max, this brings her attack up to 1,947 and her DPS up to 779, and at E2 max, it brings her attack up to 2,406 and her DPS to 962. M3ing it raises the attack boost to plus 80%, leading her attack to be 2,887 and bringing her DPS to 1,155. Her second skill increases her damage taken by 25%, which is slightly concerning considering she already has no defense or resistance. But when it comes to the positive things it does, it increases her attack speed by 65, leading her attack interval to now be 1.5 seconds. Attacks deal 100% physical damage and have a 25% chance to stun the target for 2 seconds. At E1 max, this brings her DPS up to 865 and 1069 at E2 max. M3ing it increases the attack speed buff to plus 80, giving Quartz an attack interval of 1.38 seconds, and her attacks now deal 120% physical damage, that being 1,925. Both these aspects combining to give her a DPS of 1,395. There isn't really much to say about Quartz. Her skills are extremely straightforward and don't require much explanation, and even though it's easy to criticize her admittedly non-existent survivability, I'm actually surprised we haven't had a class that's straight up just a glass cannon until now. Plus, we've seen time and time again that subclasses tend to both evolve their niches and cement their utilities as more units come out. And even though Wind Chimes is also not the best, I'm still curious as to what they may do with Crushers that'll come out in the future. Though I do find it hilarious how the official Arknight's Twitter announcement for Quartz decided to badger on how she's an unremarkable mercenary and how her combat skills are nothing to write home about. I mean, come on. That's just mean.
ごめんなさい。さっきのペンローのお兄さんにあなたのことなんて呼べばいいのか聞きそびれちゃって。実は僕、会社って言葉もクルビアの人たちの話でしか聞いたことなかったんだ。それで、あなたを社長って呼べばいいかな。ドクターでいい？そっか、覚えたよ。
As the years go by, we get more and more units and more subclasses, to the point where some of the base game archetypes seem to have been almost forgotten, the last time we got a new Corecaster being in August of 2020. But their break is over because at the price of 600 certs per copy, Qanipalaat is here. Being the most basic of caster subclasses, he has no other trace beyond doing arts damage, but his talent already gives us a hint as to what Qanipalaat in particular specializes in, applying 12 12 to 22% arts fragility to all aerial enemies within his attack range. With the next Dragon Sibling event, he will get a module that, at level 3, gives him an extra 150 max HP and 50 attack, allows him to recover 1 SP each time he attacks an elite or leader enemy, plus increases the arts fragility debuff of his talent to 30%. I usually include the extra stats modules give in the unit's E2 stat sheet, but I didn't this time, so I thought I'd just tell you the exact base stat numbers it increased instead. It was a totally conscious decision to not include his module since it isn't out yet on global, and definitely not because I didn't scroll all the way down on Ace Ship and didn't even notice he had a module at first. Imagine doing that. Anyways, his first skill makes him prioritize aerial enemies and increases his attack speed by 60, bringing it down to a single second, which consequently means his DPS is his attack. That being 621 at E1 max and 721 at E2 max. A nice little speed boost that lasts for 30 seconds and helps you kill aerial enemies faster. Nothing much else to say. Although M3ing it does make it even speedier, bringing the boost to plus 90, leading his attack interval to be 0.84 seconds and his new DPS to be 858. Skill 2, however, does quite a bit more. He'll levitate 2 ground enemies within his range for 7 seconds, aka temporarily turning them into aerial units and essentially stunning them by disabling their ability to attack or move. These 2 units will receive 60% arts damage every 0.5 seconds while they're airborne, and once this effect ends, he'll deal 230% arts damage to all enemies in a small area around each target. At E1 max, the amount of damage he'll be dealing to each target is 373 every 0.5 seconds, totaling to 5,222 by the end of the levitation effect, dealing another 1,428 damage to and to the enemies around each target once they're allowed to set foot on the ground once more. At E2 max, the damage per half second is 433, totaling to 6,062, with a burst damage of 1,658 at the end. M3ing it increases the damage dealt every 0.5 seconds to 75%. As well as the final burst of damage to 300%. This leads the consistent damage to be 541, totaling to 7,574 after 7 seconds, and the end burst is equal to 2,163. One important thing to note is that, as a part of the in-game weight mechanic, enemies who have a weight of 3 or higher are affected by this for only half the time, that being 3.5 seconds in this specific skill's case. All in all, now that Whole Heak is released, we can see that Qanipalaat was sort of a prototype for this almost new subclass of Corecasters. With his prioritization of aerial units during his first skill and levitate effect with his second, not to mention debuffing aerial units within his range, it's nice to finally have a new caster who has a different type of utility. Plus, he's just the fluffiest little guy. I know he's a Vulpo, but I can't resist the urge to pat him on the head and call him a good boy. These were 2 simple units to talk about, plus they only had 2 skills each, so this was a pretty quick little overview on them, but I still wanted to get this out there for those who are interested in them, despite my physical health trying its absolute hardest to drag me down. Remember how I said I was sick last week? Well, boy oh boy, did I only get worse. So once again, I apologize if I sounded nasally or wonky in any way. I'm actually getting better now, but whoo boy was the last week rough. Working on this felt like it took 100 times the amount of effort, even though it's one of my shorter videos, but being sick just does that to you. It zaps away all your energy and functionality, and I'm suspecting even a bit of your soul as well. Now, this may be the first time I've ever mentioned something non-gacha related here beyond just a silly little reference, but if everything goes according to plan, this video should go up on Monday, which is the 29th, which means it's almost June, which means it's almost into the Spider-Verse time, and I absolutely cannot skip out on the chance to wish everyone who may be going to watch it a wonderful time. Personally, I'm going to be watching it on the 4th, and I cannot wait to see it. Since I edit on my phone now, when I was working on the Path video, I sort of just binged the original Raimi Spider trilogy as background noise, and accidentally ended up putting myself into a Marvel mood by doing so. I say this with no exaggeration whatsoever. Animation has genuinely not been the same ever since the first Spider-Verse came out, so to say the bar is high for this one isn't enough. Plus, Plus, I just can't wait to see Hobie on the big screen. He's my boy. I'm gonna stop myself there before I get too carried away talking about this. If you're able to, consider checking the link in the description and supporting me on Buy Me a Coffee so I can pay my bills and you can get a doodle. That's all I have to say. If you're new here, feel free to stick around. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you another day.